Okay. Hi, girls. For those of you that were out last week or who missed some classes, I promised you I'd make you these videos so that you could learn the Perek. Hopefully, these will make sense, and this will give you a good starting point. Obviously, if you need any help after you listen to these, just let me know. I'm happy to be helpful. Okay. So we started this Perek the Thursday right before Shabbaton. This was the Perek that you guys learned together in Chavruta. I just want to do a brief summary so that everybody knows at least what we were doing. So the story is about, this is a continuation of Elisha and his miracles, and the Perek talks about a general from Aram named Naaman. Okay, you see his name there in the first pasuk, and the issue with Naaman was that he had tzara'at. He was a mitzora. He had tzara'at, and coincidentally, it happened to have been in a previous battle. Aram had captured this young girl, and we'll talk more about this. I'm just giving you a summary. Okay, and this young girl became Naaman's wife's servant. So one day, I guess they had tried a lot of things to help Naaman get better, and they were not successful. And one day, this girl basically says to her master, to Naaman's wife, where I come from, there's this guy by the name of, there's this Navi there, and he's probably going to be able to cure him. So obviously, she's referring to Elisha. So Naaman goes to his master, who's the king of Aram, right? Naaman works for the king of Aram, and he tells the king of Aram, I'd like to go to Malchut Yisrael, to this Navi. He doesn't say the name here, but he's named Elisha, and from what I hear, he can cure me. So the king of Aram feels that he needs to ask permission. That's the right thing to do, that Naaman, who's a general, can't just show up. People are probably going to think that he is going to war. And he writes a letter to the king of Malchut Yisrael. The king of Malchut Yisrael is still Yehoram ben Achav's son Yehoram, like it was in the previous Perek. He writes the king of Yisrael a letter basically asking permission. He sends him gifts, asking permission for Naaman to come and to meet with Elisha. When the king of Yisrael, when Yehoram gets this letter, he starts freaking out because basically he thinks that this is all a setup, and that the king of Aram is sending Naaman to go and really to kill him or to start a war. Ultimately, what happens is Elisha steps in, and Elisha says, no, let him come and see me. So this guy Naaman, this general Naaman comes to see Elisha, and Elisha says to him, go dip in the Yarden, go to the Jordan River, go to the Yarden, and dip there seven times. When he gives that advice to Naaman, Naaman gets very angry. And he gets angry because he basically says, I have rivers in Aram. Why did I have to come all the way here to dip in a river? I thought you were basically going to do some magic trick and cure my tzara'at. Ultimately, one of Naaman's servants who was with him says to him, listen, this is not a big deal. If you're so desperate to be cured from this tzara'at, wouldn't you do something big if the Navi asked you to do it? He's not even asking you to do anything big. He's asking you to do something small. Just listen to him. It's not a big deal. So Naaman does it, and ultimately he is cured, and his skin turns back to normal. Naaman is obviously inspired. He's pretty impressed by the powers of Elisha. And he says to him, what can I give you as a gift? He wants to give him a gift. And Elisha says, no, I don't want a gift from you. Ultimately, Naaman leaves. He goes home, and Elisha accepts nothing from him. That's basically part one of the story. That's a very basic summary. We're obviously going to go into a little bit more detail. I'm going to do this summary for the second half of the story when we get to that part. So if you go to the top, where we're going to start here from Perek Aleph. From Pasuk Aleph. I'm going to read these psukim, and hopefully this is all making sense. Okay? So Naaman sar tzava melech Aram haya ish gadol lifnei Adonav uneso panim kibon natan Hashem shu'al Aram va'ish haya gibor chayil mitzora. So the basic translation of the pasuk is Naaman was the general of Aram. He was a very big guy. He was an important guy, and he was pretty famous. And he was a hero, and he also had tzara. That's the basic idea of the pasuk. But if we actually break it down, I actually think we could break down the pasuk into 4 different parts. So I'm going to try to get a little fancy here. I don't know if this is going to work. So I'm going to highlight the 4 different parts of the pasuk. Just kidding. Okay, sorry about that. I thought I was able to make that work. Okay, so here's what I want to show you guys. If you look at this first pasuk, okay, I'm going to break it down into 4 different parts. Here's the first part. Okay, Naaman sar tzava melech Aram. The second part of this pasuk, haya ish gadol lifnei Adonav, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. Uniso panim kibonatan Hashem shuala aram. This is the third part of the pasuk. Okay, and v'hayish haya gibor chayil mitzora. That's the last part of the pasuk. Okay, so there's four different things really here, and you'll see what doing down here in a second. There's four different parts of this pasuk. Four different things we learn about Naaman. He was the general to the king of Aram. Hayayish gadol pnei Adonav. He was a big guy. He was an important guy who served his master. His master was the king of Aram. Uniso panim kibonatan Hashem shuala aram. He was important because Hashem gave him this major victory. He was a war hero, but he was also a mitzora. Okay, he had tzarat. So those are the four things we learn about Naaman. So actually, there's something very interesting that we can learn here. So if you look at actually, what I'm going to do for a second is I took each of these four parts, and I put them down over here where you see. I'm going to actually eliminate. I want you to see what it looks like, and you'll see where I'm going with this. Hopefully, in a second. So if I, let's say, got rid of, if I were to get rid of some of the parts of this pasuk, I think what you'll see something very different. So pardon this, I just don't see the strike through option. Okay, I'm going to get rid of a few parts of this. And you'll see what I'm doing in a second. Hold on. I did this in class, so it was a little easier when I had a board. I'm going to get rid of these words here. You'll see, obviously, we can't get rid of words, but I want you to see how there's something very interesting that you see when you look at it this way. Okay, so imagine if the pasuk ultimately read like this. Okay, if crossing out all the parts that I crossed out here, v'naaman haya ish gadol uneso panim v'haish haya gibor chayil. So I'm going to copy and paste this down here so you could see. Nope, just joking. Okay, v'naaman haya ish gadol. You'll see, hopefully, why I'm spending time on this. Okay, imagine if the pasuk said like this: "V'naaman haya ish gadol uneso panim, v'haish haya gibor chayil." So what would this mean? This would mean Naaman was this important guy. He was held in high regard, and he was a warrior. He was a war hero. He was a hero. Now, the reason that I'm showing you this is because when you look at the psukim actually carefully, the part that I crossed out actually adds something to our image that we get of Naaman. Without these phrases that I crossed out, you would have a little bit of a different view of Naaman. And what these crossed out phrases here that are obviously in the pasuk that are not crossed out serve to teach us. It really serves to teach us that maybe Naaman is not as great as we may have thought, or there's something going on here than just this like outstanding hero. Naaman was the Sar Tzava Melech Aram. He was Naaman, but ultimately he answered to the king of Aram. Haya ish gadol, he was an important guy, but lifnei Adonav, to his master. Who was his master? The king of Aram. Uneso panim, and he was held in high regard. But why? The pasuk tells us, Kibonatan Hashem shuala Aram, because Hashem basically gave Aram this miracle, and that's why he's held in high regard. I'm going to talk about what that is in a second. Ve'ish haya gibor chayil, and then it adds the words mitzora. He was a hero, but he was also a mitzora. So I hope what you're getting the impression of is that each one of the accolades, each one of the praises about Naaman is like qualified further. It's like brings down your expectations a little bit. And I think the reason for this is because we see there's a theme that we're going to start to see here, and we're going to see this theme really all throughout the Perek. So there's a few themes that we see running through here. There's the theme of what we call here. I'm gonna write this out for you. Power and submissiveness. Okay, so power and submissiveness. Submissive means to like basically be under somebody, not to have so much power. I'm sorry. I meant to say sorry. Power and subservience. Okay, serving somebody, someone who's powerful, someone who answers to somebody. We're going to see a major theme here of pride and humility, of ga'ava and anava, and we're seeing a theme here of authority. And submission or submissiveness, right? Someone who's an authority and people who have to answer to that authority. If you don't understand what this means now, just hold on to these words, and we're going to really see this develop throughout the Perek. So one more thing that I just want to mention, okay, is these words here, Uneso panim kibonatan Hashem shuala Aram. So what does this mean? What Yeshua, what salvation did Hashem give to Aram? So the Mitzudat David, amongst many others, say that Achav, if you remember, who was the king of Yisrael, who Yehoram's father, right? He was the pretty wicked king. This is one of the groups did this way back a few months ago. But when Achav was killed, the Navi tells us that basically a general shot an arrow, and it randomly happened to have landed on Achav. So let me show you actually what that looks like. So in the very last Perek in Melachim Aleph, so if you look at here in Pasuk Lamed Kadalid, right over here, V'ish mashach bekeshet l'tzumo vayaket melech Yisrael. A man just shot an arrow, and it happened to have hit the king of Israel, who was Achav. And that was really, he was known, Naaman, as this war hero because he was the one who ultimately killed Achav. It was his arrow that ultimately shot Achav and ultimately killed him. Now, it wasn't, he didn't really mean to shoot at Achav. He just shot at it, and obviously it was Hashem's miracle that led it toward Achav. But he was ultimately known as this major war hero in Aram as a result of the fact that he was the one that killed Achav. Okay, so when it says this, Aram, he was great because Hashem made him great. So each one of these phrases, again, V'na'aman sartav melech Aram, Haya ish gadol l'fnei Adonav, everything kind of brings down the expectation a little bit to go back to where we were over here, right? Without some of these phrases, you would get even a greater view of who Naaman was. Okay, so sorry that took a while. We did spend a little bit of time on that in class. Okay, and let's keep going. Va'aram yatzu gidudim vayishbu me'eretz Yisrael na'arak tana. So it happened to have been in the past. This is like telling you like a side fact. It happened to have been in the past that Aram, one time when they went to war against Israel, probably around the same time as the Achav thing, okay, probably, they happened to have captured a young girl, Na'arak Tana, and she became the servant of Eshet Naaman. There's an interesting contrast here, okay, when you look at the words, Na'arak Tana, and when you see over here where you see Naaman was an Ish Gadol, again, you sort of get this like there's a hierarchy in this Perek. Some people are important and famous, and some people are Katan. So, right, Ish Gadol is basically the opposite of a Na'arak Tana. A big man, an important man, Na'arak Tana, a small girl. So again, this kind of playing into this theme I mentioned before of kind of this like there's these higher powers and lower powers, this hierarchy that you see here, power and subservience. So, okay, so what happens? Vatomer al Gvirta. So this Na'arak Tana says to Eshet Naaman, Achalei Adoni lifnei Hanavi asher b'Shomron, Az Yosef Otomi Sarato. There's this Navi from the people that I come from. I think he'll be able to cure Naaman. So what you could probably assume here is that Naaman had probably been trying to get cured for a while. He obviously wasn't succeeding. And, maybe she heard him crying to his wife all the time. Maybe she heard, his wife crying that her husband couldn't get cured from this tzarat. Maybe she saw Naaman become, lose his self-confidence because he wasn't able to go out to battle because he had tzarat. So somehow for those, probably one of those reasons, she comes to her master, her mistress, and she says to her, I think why don't you try this, just a word of advice. Okay, so here's what happens. Naaman comes to Adonav. Who is this Adon? Melech Aram. He comes to Melech Aram and he says to him, I got this advice from this girl, happens to be a captive. She is my wife's servant. Okay, and it basically obviously tells him, this is the advice that she gave. Can I go? Can I have permission from you? Right, the Melech Aram is his master. Can I have permission from you to go and to please see this Navi, Elisha? Obviously, she's referring to Elisha. Vayomer Melech Aram, Lech bo ve'eshlecha sefer al Melech Yisrael, vayilach vayikach be'edo eser kikrig hesev v'sheish alafim zahav ve'eser chalifot begadim. Okay, so basically the king of Aram says, yes, you should go. Let me just write him a letter. Basically, let me ask permission, because more or less, if he shows up, doesn't say this in the pasuk, but we could assume that if he just shows up, if the general of Aram, who previously had killed the king of Israel, right, who by the way happens to be Yehoram's father, okay, so if Yehoram all of a sudden sees Naaman show up, he's going to think he's under attack. So let me write him a letter in advance and let me send some gifts and let me explain to him why you're coming. Vayavo pasuk vav. Vayavo hasefer el melech Yisrael limor ve'atakivo hasefer hazeh elecha ini shalachti elecha Naaman abdi v'safto mitzarato. He reads the letter, and the letter basically says, by the way, when you get this, my general is already on its way. I'm going to pick this up in the next video. I only have a 15-minute limit.